Namaste students. Today I am here in front of you again with a new topic and a very interesting topic, that is voices. So voice, I know that you have also discussed the same topic in your previous classes, but today we are going to discuss it in detail. In this video I will tell you how to define voice. How to define, before starting any topic we should know what is the definition of that particular topic. So what is a voice? So according to me, voice is that property of a verb which shows whether the subject is experiencing the action or performing the action. So I will write it for you on the board. Voice is that property of a verb which shows whether the subject is performing or experiencing the action. For example, if I will take a very simple sentence, Sita loves Ram. This is a very simple sentence in active voice, and if I will change it into passive voice, in this sentence Sita is the doer of the action and love is this is the subject, this is the main verb, and this is the object. So voice is that property of a verb which shows whether the subject is performing the action or experiencing the action. Sita loves Ram. So in this sentence, Sita is performing the action of love with Ram, and so this sentence is in active voice. And I will change it into passive voice. Ram is loved by Sita. So in this sentence, Ram is experiencing the action of love by Sita. In first sentence, Sita is performing the action of love with Ram. But in second sentence, Ram is experiencing the action of love by Sita. So I think the definition of voice is clear to you. Voice is that property of a verb which shows whether the subject is experiencing the action or performing the action. With examples I have explained it to you. I think you got it. And now you know that voices are of two types. The first one is active voice, and the second is passive voice. So how to define these two, active and passive? We will learn it, how to define active voice and how to define passive voice. You know that students, in English grammar we have 5 properties of a verb. So the properties of verb, which are these properties of verb? The first property of verb is voice, second is mood, and the third is number, fourth is person, and the fifth property is tense. These are the 5 properties of a verb. and here in this video we are concerned with only voice, this property of a verb, and we know that this is of active voice. This is, so these properties, voice is of two type, active voice, active voice. So what is active voice? What is active voice? Active voice is also active voice. A sentence is said to be in active voice when the subject of the verb performs the action of the verb. When the subject performs the action of the verb. When the subject performs the action of the verb. Subject performs the action of the verb. I have given you an example. Sita loves Ram. In this sentence, Sita is doing the action, performing the action of love with Ram. So when the subject of the verb when the subject performs the action of the verb, what is the action of the verb? Love. Love is the action in this sentence. This is the main verb. Who is performing? Sita is performing, and so the sentence is said to be in active voice. And the second is in passive voice. Passive voice. When a sentence is said to be in a passive voice, in which a sentence is said to be in passive voice when the subject not performs the action of the verb. When passive voice means when the subject is receiver of the action. When the subject is receiver of the action. Here I will change it into passive voice. Ram is loved by Sita. Ram is loved by Sita. So Ram here is the receiver of the love of Sita. So in the active voice, subject performs the action of the verb. Sita is performing the action of love, and here Ram is the receiver of the action of love by Sita. So I think the definition of both active and passive voice is clear to you. Now before starting the tenses, before starting to teach you how to change the sentences of active voice into passive voice, we need to discuss some basic rules that are mandatory for learning the voices. So I will write it for you on the board. After that, in our next video, we will start with present simple tense, past simple tense, and future simple tense. So in this video, I will just give you the introductions of the active and passive to you. And in my next video, I will start tenses, how to change the sentences of active voice into passive voice. So the first rule is subject. So rule, subject is changed into object, and object is changed into subject. Object is changed into subject, and subject is changed into object. If I say the dog chased squirrels. The dog chased squirrels. So the dog chased the squirrel. If I say the squirrel, the dog chased the squirrel. Or if I say monkeys adore bananas. Monkeys adore bananas. So how you will change it? You will change it, the squirrels the squirrels, yeah, the squirrel was chased by the dog, and bananas were adored by monkeys. Bananas are adored by monkeys. So subject is here in the sentence. The dog is the subject and chase is the main verb, and the squirrel is the object. So in this sentence the squirrel become the subject of the object and was is here used. I will tell you all the rules why was is used and why we use why. This is just to make you understand. You just need to focus on subject, how subject is changed into object and how object is changed into subject. The squirrel become the subject and the dog become the object of the subject, and the squirrel become the subject of the object of the subject, sorry. And same is the case in the next sentence. So I think all three sentences, so subject is changed into object and object is changed into subject. And the second rule is third form of verb is always used. Third form of verb is always used. So as you can see in the given sentences, third form adore, adored. So chase, chased, chased. So this is the third form. Third form is always used. This is the third form of the verb. It is always used while changing the sentences of active voice into passive voice. And now there are some pronouns. So how they change, I will write it on the board for you. So you need to learn how to change the pronouns, and you need to keep one thing also in mind, that the pronouns which I am going to write on the board, they are interchangeable when you will use them. Right now you just have to learn them. After that, when we will use these rules into the sentences, like I is changed into me, I changed into me, he is changed into she, he is changed into him, she changed into her, we changed into us, they changed into them, and it remains it, you remains you, and your remains your. Clear? So first, one thing you need to keep in mind, that if I is given, then it will become me. If me is given, it will become I. They are interchangeable. Same is the case with everyone. They will remain the same, so you need not to worry about all these three. So it remains it, you remains you, and I change into me, he changed into him, she changed into her, her is changed into she, we change into us is changed into we, and they change into them, and them is changed into they, and all these, and these three, it, you and your, remains same. So this is the main thing. All these pronouns you have to keep in mind. So while changing the sentences, if you don't know how to change the pronouns, then you cannot learn active and passive voice. So you all need to remember this, you all need to learn this. And after that, so I have discussed the rules with you, all the rules I have discussed with you, and now I will make you understand by giving one example. The professor teaches the student. If I write on the board, the professor teaches the students. The professor teaches the students. So the professor here is subject doing action. Subject doing action. Subject is doing action. This is the main verb. So this is the main verb in the sentence, and the student is receiver of the action. So the students are the receiver of the action. How they are receiver of the action? Because what action is in the sentence? Teaching. And who is doing the teaching? The professor. And who is receiving the result of the action? The students. So they are the objects. So this sentence is in active voice. How do you come to know? Because the subject is the doer of the action of a main verb. Main verb is teaching. Who is doing the action? The professor is doing the action. And a student are receiving the action. Receivers of the action of the main verb done by the professor. And if I write the students are taught by the professor. The students are taught by the professor. So here the students are subject of object. This is the students are subject of object. Subject of object means here it is the object, but now here it becomes subject. So this is the subject of a object. So receiving the action. Subject of object is receiving the action. Receiving the action. Here the students are not doer of the action. Doer of the action is the professor, and this is taught. This is past participle or passive verb, you can say. This is passive verb. This is a taught is the passive verb, and the professor, again the professor doing the action. Doer of the action or doing the action. Action. So this is in passive voice. This is in passive voice, and this sentence is in active voice. So how to recognize? I have told you how to recognize the sentences of active and passive voice. First sentence I have written on the board that the professor teaches the student. The action of teaching is going on, and this is done by the professor. Who is the subject of the main verb? This is the main verb, and which is the subject? Subject is the professor. So subject of the main verb is the professor, and it is doing the action. The professor is doing the action of teaching, and who is the receiver of the action? Students are receiving. So immediately we come to know that this is active voice. And the second is passive voice. The students are taught by the professor. The students are taught by the professor means the students, now the students become subject here, subject of object. They are still receiving the actions of teaching done by the professor, but now here they are the subject. Subject receiving the action. This is the passive verb, and the professor doing the action. The professor doing the action. So the sentence immediately you come to know, because the passive verb is given, third form is given. So you will come to know that the sentence is in passive voice.